Hello again. Following the resounding success of my last marathon video, I thought why not milk this cow dry and do it again. So I welcome you to my thesis that marathon is a masterpiece. We're gonna talk about why the progression system is misunderstood by people who suck at Gucci, how the learning curve is doing exactly what it should, why the world design is brilliant, and then, because I'm not a shill, exactly what the game gets wrong, how that contradicts the good parts, and why the player count is bleeding out faster than a man in the back alleys of London. All of this and more because I have opinions and a microphone, a dangerous combination. I also should mention that I grew up on COD over Halo, I never played Destiny, and I have no prior bias for or against Bungie. So with that, let's get into it, gentlemen. And we are going straight into the deep end of controversy because wipes and progression are the most complained about parts of this game. And the complaint isn't just this is hard, it's this is why the game is dying. It's something I've seen everywhere. Discord, friends, streams, Twitter. Nah, I'm kidding, I only use that last one for porn. The argument goes, hundreds of hours to max all of the factions, cannot join late, getting gear from killing players is unreasonable. Because if I, a super awesome gamer, can't do it, what are the poor newbies gonna do? And look, it sounds coherent, it has the confidence of someone who's figured something out. It's also completely misguided, sorry. Because here's the thing these people happen to gloss over. Marathon has level-based matchmaking. You do not consistently see blue shields until you are ready for blue shields. I personally started 2.5 weeks late. I still haven't unlocked the blue shield trade. Almost exclusively play crew fill, and my supply of shields looks like this. Gear isn't locked behind the unlock tree. It's locked behind the people wearing it. And all you need to take it from them is to be smarter than them. That's the soul of the entire genre in one sentence. And if you're deep enough that you're in high-level lobbies getting gear diffed, your enemies should solve the game better than you did. Which brings me to the bigger thing, that the grind isn't a tax you pay before the game starts. The grind is the game. And the moment you stop trying to beat it and start trying to solve it, whatever that means for you specifically, is the moment it gets exponentially better. Are you doom running Dire Marsh to unlock the blue shield trade all weekend, or just farming them off of people? Grinding Traxes for better attachments on your guns, or pushing Meta to become speed and unlock a steady supply of explosives? These are real decisions with real trade-offs, and they're constantly in front of you, with each unlock giving you more ways to outsmart your opponents. If you can't compete, the answer isn't more unlocks, it's figuring out what you're missing. And while that might be a specific unlock, believe it or not, it's more than likely strategy, not aim, and it's certainly not every unlock in the tree. Completionism is just the wrong goal entirely. If you look at the achievements for Marathon, all it expects you to do is reach VIP with one faction, much less max everything across every faction. It's not even close. So if maxing was originally the wrong goal in RuneScape, a game literally built around grinding, imagine how much more wrong it is in an extraction shooter. If there were rewards like capstones carrying over, I'd understand the frustration, but the way it is now, it's more like people putting themselves in these self-imposed prisons and complaining that it's too hard to get out, and then they project those frustrations onto the casuals. Not to mention, what is an extraction shooter without something to pursue? Remember that thought because it's important, and we're gonna come back to it later. And as for the wipes, they're not the acts of an executioner, they're a hard reset on the hierarchy that forms, which is the best part, because level-based matchmaking soon becomes a long-lost concept in the higher levels. The Davids eventually become Goliaths, and the magic disappears. You stop caring that you outplayed somebody when you've got 50 of whatever they're wearing sitting in your stash. So the wipe comes along and it asks you, knowing everything you know now, can you do it better? Solve it better? And it then lets you bully all the fresh meat, which is pretty fun. But it's worth understanding how somebody becomes a self-imposed prisoner to begin with. That's right, ladies, we're gonna be talking about everything the game has to offer up until that point, starting with a learning curve, because Marathon throws a lot at you very quickly. You're very poor, just like in real life. Everything costs a fortune, just like in real life. The skill trees look like an instruction manual for a rocket ship. So naturally, every new player does the same thing. They just play the game. They run their little contracts, do a little fighting, click whatever upgrade available prompt appears, and they grind, which is fine until it isn't. Because from that point, there are, as far as I can see, exactly two paths. Path 1, keep grinding mindlessly, run out of priority contracts, conclude that Bungie hates you personally, and quit. Path 2, realize it's actually up to you, figure out how the systems interact, set your own goals, achieve them, have fun, and keep playing. I like that the game doesn't hold your hand through this. The choice to figure it out or not is completely yours. And that extends to the economy as well. The game doesn't announce to you that heals and ammo are gonna bankrupt you if you keep dying. It just lets the math catch up until you go, wait a second, and you start looking at the barter system, start looting salvage intentionally, start thinking. Now let's compare that to what the competition is doing, specifically ABI and Delta Force. There's a high skill expression in both, sure, but even if you have the mechanical skill and decision making of a Roomba, they don't discriminate. They put you in bot lobbies so you can live out your little power fantasies undisturbed, which is fine. There's clearly a market for it, but what that's actually saying is we don't trust our game to keep you here, so we're gonna keep you here artificially. Whereas Marathon makes the opposite bet. It trusts that the experience is gonna be worth the difficulty, and whether that bet pays off payoff depends entirely on everything else the game is doing, which is what we need to look at next. Bringing us to world design. Might be the shittest segue in YouTube history, but bear with me. Because while competitors love to wallow in the Eastern European Depression aesthetic, with crumbling Soviet architecture, gray skies, and a side of misery, Marathon just says, nah, I'ma put me a pink building right here, cuh. I'ma make this gun look 3D printed as hell, cuh. And there's a reason for that. Depressing realism is a safety net. Bungie looked at that safety net, and they said, I don't need it. Oh shit, maybe they did need it. I'm kidding, we're gonna decipher that whole thing later. The point is, the Marathon actually does make it work, not because the art is objectively good, though that too, but because it's consistent and it's committed. And while the visual clarity is undeniably a great side effect, the world building as a whole is doing more than you'd think. The backstory especially does something none of the other games bother with. In Tarkov, you can get your head blown smooth off by a Lapua Magnum round, and I guess the therapist just drags you back out and patches you back up. I don't know. ABI and Delta Force don't even attempt an explanation, and even in Arc Raiders, I think you only ever just get knocked out, maybe? Again, I don't know. What I do know is that Marathon handles it in a genuinely cool way, because you are not your shell, you are the consciousness inhabiting it. That distinction, which sounds small, does enormous things for immersion, feel, and mindset going into a run. If you think that's a dramatic conclusion, I don't blame you, but look at what Arc Raiders lore actually did to its player base. You're a human in a world of mechanized threats, and so is everybody else, and to some people, killing other humans feels mean. So instead of an extraction shooter, a portion of that player base just up and opted out of the genre to instead play post-apocalyptic VR chat, which, good for them, but it's a lore problem where fiction leaked into the intended experience. Marathon doesn't have that problem because you're not a fragile survivor. You're a consciousness piloting a death machine on a corporate contract. So nobody in Marathon is having a moment of moral hesitation before murdering you. It doesn't just answer what happens when you die, it answers what you are. And the answer makes you feel like the kind of thing that should probably be shooting the shit out of everybody. The rest of the design reinforces this too. Look at the heat mechanic, Marathon's version of stamina. I'm gonna need you to sit down for this revolutionary insight, because instead of a bar going down, it's a bar going up. Some of you are already typing that that's the same thing, but shut up. Because one makes you feel like a tired human, while the other makes you feel like the Terminator. Everything sounds obvious in hindsight, and that's exactly the point. The best design always sounds obvious in hindsight. Speaking of sounds, let's talk audio. Because early on in your journey, it is genuinely overwhelming. I remember on Perimeter, the ambient noise between the cliffs sounded exactly like footsteps to me, and I was losing my mind jumping at nothing. It was a wall of noise that didn't mean anything. But the game is making you a deal. Put the time in, learn it, and you'll be rewarded. Because once you've panicked enough times and mistaken clanker footsteps for runners and runner footsteps for clankers, something clicks. And all of a sudden, you're differentiating UESC and runner footsteps in a split second through cover. You can pinpoint exactly where someone is, behind you, above you, below you, in bed with your wife, all just from sound. So the same way the game converts your understanding of the barter system into an economic advantage, it converts your attention and your mistakes into a competitive one, so that before long, you're not just hearing the game, you're smelling it with your ears. The gunplay works from a similar angle because every weapon has enough oomph to ruin somebody's day. Alright, not you. I don't like LMGs, but I hate facing them because they're undeniably oppressive. I don't like railguns, but the one time I used one to clear wall space, it still felt incredible. And if I'm running a free kit, I don't think there's ever been a time where I've downed a player. Okay, rude. Where I've downed a player, looted their bag, and been disappointed by the gun I found on them. That matters, because if everything hits hard, the meta stops being a mandatory reading list and becomes optional. You're developing taste over chasing tier lists, figuring out what kind of runner you are. And unlike a lot of games that promise that premise, the choice here is real because all options are viable. Once again, the game is trusting you to figure out what you want and to go and take it. But being able to smell runners through walls and dispose of them with a gun they've never seen before does you no good if you don't know the floor plan you're playing on. So the map progression is worth considering as well. There are currently 4 of them, each one a harder version of the same question. How good are you actually? Perimeter doesn't ask much of you. It's easy to navigate with manageable sightlines. It's a map that's basically saying, this is our $250 million game, get yourself comfy. It gives you enough rope to learn with, but not enough rope to hang yourself with, which is the last time Marathon is going to be that generous with you. Because next you're going to be thrown into the meat grinder by the name of Dire Marsh. Long sightlines, nerds like me with snipers, 5 billion in a single run contracts, anomalies, lockdowns. It should feel like a step up, and it does. But here's what's interesting about it. It never tips into feeling unfair, because it's not punishing ignorance randomly, it's punishing it specifically, in ways you can pick out and correct. The map is brutal, but it's legible. There is always a reason. Outpost is where the game stops giving you the question and makes you go find it yourself. There's heat cascades, clearance cards, armories, the pinwheel, this massive central structure with premium loot and 3 completely different ways in, each requiring something different from you. Clearance cards get you in loud, announcing to everybody exactly what you're doing and opening every main entrance for everybody. A side entrance puzzle that you can do quietly and sneak in. Though to be honest, I've never gone in this way because I'm not a bitch, so here appears to be walking out of it instead. Or you can track down a specific laptop to call a one-time elevator. Outpost doesn't tell you any of this, it just exists in all of its glory and it waits to see if you're paying attention. But let's be honest, you all robbed yourselves of the joy of figuring it out and just watched a YouTube video, you fuckers. Yeah, me too. Cryo Archive. I'm gonna be honest, I haven't touched this as much because I mostly play Crewfill and randoms are not the brightest lamps in the house. But what I have seen is a map that assumes you've done your homework. There's great loot, absolutely brutal lobbies with no handrails in sight. They call it the Lose Everything Factory for a reason, exactly how a final map should feel. So the difficulty isn't just escalating, it is asking more of you at each step, which is either exactly what you came here for or it's a preview of what we need to talk about next. Because if everything is so good, why is the player count bleeding out? Some of it is just how extraction shooters and genre-adjacent games work, specifically seasonal ones. There's the way knowledge of season length changes a player's reason for joining and their willingness to stay. On a Rust server with a month-long wipe, you're gonna see fairly high pop a week or two in. On weekly servers, basically everybody's gone before day 3. So a predetermined 3-month wipe cycle basically tells every mid-season newcomer, fuck off, bitch. That's not me saying wipes are bad all of a sudden, it's me saying that the fixed schedule creates a natural dead zone, and confusing that for the game dying is just stupid. So that's completely normal. The more interesting question is why Marathon seems to be speedrunning the process, and it has a lot to do with that what is an extraction shooter without something to pursue question that we asked earlier. The data I'm working from with this is Steam achievements, so let's dive into those. 97.6% of players completed the tutorial, 93.7% died for the first time, meaning about 6% got through the tutorial and then quit before their shell even hit the floor, quitting while you were ahead. Respectable. Then you've got a fairly steady decline down through completing runs, exfilling, killing players, all the things that are just playing the game, and by the time you hit anti-establishment, kill 147 UESC units, you've lost about 48% of your player base. That's steep, but it's still relatively normal. But then you hit jackpot, and half the remaining player base just goes poof. 51% down to 26% in a single achievement. And here's the thing about jackpot, it's not a skill check, it's not win a 1v3 or complete co-evolution 5 out of 5, it is looting containers. It is by definition just playing the game. So these people didn't hit a wall as much as they hit a reason to stop. And through the achievements that follow, you lose maybe 4% across the next 3. So the bleed basically stops, which means the people who made it past the cliff aren't leaving. And for the actually crowd that are getting ready to point at the next 2 achievements, use your brain. Now look at where end run sits. Eliminate 14 rival runners, 53.2%, meaning the player base was actively engaging in PvP before that cliff. So these aren't people who hid in corners and quit when they got shot. They were fighting, looting, extracting. They were doing exactly what you're supposed to do, and they still left right around jackpot. So as much as everybody loves concluding that Marathon is simply too hardcore for your average casual, the data doesn't back you up, and you should probably stop stroking your neckbeard when you tell people that. If brutality was the problem, you'd see a continued steep drop, not a cliff into a plateau. And the cliff is specific, and my best guess, based on my own experience by the way, so take it with a grain of salt, is what I hinted at earlier in Path 1. Priority contracts. Because right around that window of playtime is exactly where the game stops handing you a steady stream of objectives and it asks you to figure out what you want to do next. I can't prove that's the mechanism at play here because there's no complete your first batch of priority contracts achievement to point to, but the shape of the data fits and it lines up to the T with my own experience and achievement timings. So could it be burnout or people taking a bit longer to decide the game isn't for them? Sure, it could be, but if that were the case, you'd expect the steep drop-off to continue. So the thing most likely killing retention isn't the wipes, the hardcore reputation, the learning curve, the audio, or the maps. It's the moment the game stops temporarily holding your hand with objectives and assumes you're going to take it from there. Half the player base wasn't ready for that, and the irony is that it is so fixable without touching a single thing of what makes the game worth playing. More priority contracts, clearer skill tree signposting, maybe some color coding, a handful of highlighted beginner-friendly upgrades per tree, maybe more drastic measures like separating solo fill and full pre-made matchmaking. You can consider the questions of the prisoners. Do blue shields come too late? Are Biolens seeds the Antichrist and silent killer of the game? Do players not feel like they're progressing fast enough? Not meaningfully enough? So there's a lot of questions to consider, but that's ultimately for Bungie to decide. The only question remaining for us to answer, is Marathon a masterpiece? Here's what I know. Every system in this game pulls in the same direction. It wants you to pay attention, get smarter, and it wants you to take what you've earned. The world tells you what you are, the audio rewards your attention in it, and the maps then demand everything you've learned. And when you actually engage with a progression loop rather than fight it, it is one of the most satisfying in the genre. And the data backs that up. The people who made it past the cliff don't seem to be leaving. Bungie builds something that once it hooks you, it doesn't let you go. They did so many things right, and then right at the handoff point, they assumed you'd be so hooked that you'd push through on your own, and they were right for half of the player base. The other half closed the game and went to the r/marathon subreddit. So fix that one moment, and what you have is a game for the masses. Hopefully. But a masterpiece? You read the title before clicking, so you already know what I think. And if you think I'm wrong, make sure to let me have it in the comments. And if you think I'm a smart, sexy genius who's incredibly well endowed and also very handsome, then the comments are open for you as well. Also, please check out my last marathon video. The view count in the intro wasn't a joke. It's doing horribly. Just go watch it. It's funny, I promise. Okay, love you. Bye.